You have been waiting for this for months. The holiday you saved a year to afford, the result you spent a decade earning, the first date with someone you actually like. And 3 days before it arrives, you are not excited. You are rehearsing the flight going wrong. You are running the scenario where it rains the entire week. You are replaying the last time something this good turned around and became the worst story you told for years afterwards. And the worst part is that you know it is coming, and you still cannot stop. The better the thing is, the further from you it feels. So what is your brain doing? And why does wanting something good feel, up close, so much like dread? Hold that question, because the answer is not what most people think it is. Start with a Tuesday night in a laboratory in Michigan in the early 1990s. A neuroscientist named Kent Berridge is watching a rat. Specifically, watching what happens when the parts of the rat's brain responsible for dopamine are carefully disabled. The conventional wisdom at the time was that dopamine is the pleasure chemical. Block it, and the rat stops enjoying things. What Berridge found was stranger than that. The rat stopped working for rewards. It stopped seeking them out, stopped trying to reach the food. But if you placed the food directly in its mouth, it still showed every sign of enjoying it. The lip licking, the satisfaction. The dopamine, it turned out, was not running the pleasure. It was running the wanting. It was the signal that pulled the animal toward the thing, the hunger for it, the gap between here and there. And that distinction is the first piece of your answer, because your brain is running the same system right now. When something good is on its way, dopamine does not give you warmth. It gives you reach, a forward lean toward the thing, a restless searching for it, a pull that does not sit still. That is why you keep checking how many days are left. That is why you cannot stop thinking about it. The wanting system is doing its job exactly right. The problem is, it is not running alone, because underneath the wanting, a second system is running simultaneously. And this one is older. Think of it like two radio channels playing at the same time. One is the dopamine channel, forward-leaning, hungry, alive to the possibility. And the second channel is what a researcher named Brosschot called perseverative cognition. The brain's threat monitoring system running on repeat, not because anything has gone wrong, but because something matters enough to be worth protecting. Brosschot spent years documenting what he called the default threat response, the finding that when the brain registers something as genuinely significant, the threat system does not simply note it and stand down. It switches on and stays on. It runs simulations. It plays scenarios. And the more the thing matters, the more it has to lose, and the louder that second channel plays. And here is why the threat channel wins. Evolution built it louder. An ancestor who spent 3 days before a good hunt rehearsing the ways it could fail was more likely to survive than the one who simply enjoyed the anticipation and arrived unprepared. The anxious channel is not a flaw. It was a competitive advantage. It is just running in a world where the hunt is a holiday and the predator is the possibility that your flight is delayed. The better the thing is, the more the second channel turns up. Not because you are pessimistic, because you are built that way, and it is loudest when the stakes are highest. But that is only the first part of the story, and it is the part that makes the next part almost invisible. Here is what is actually happening underneath all of it. And this is the part that, once you see it, you cannot unsee. The dread is not pessimism. It is not broken wiring. A psychologist named Douglas Menin would call it what it actually is: mental simulation of threat, running ahead of the event to rehearse the loss before it happens. Your brain is not imagining the holiday failing because it thinks it will fail. It is running that simulation because it has found something it cannot afford to lose unexpectedly, and it has decided to pay the emotional cost early, in advance, in controlled conditions, so that if the real loss comes, it cannot ambush you. The grief will already be paid. The fall will already have been rehearsed. This is what the brain calls safe. Not the optimistic version, that would leave you exposed. The safe version, pre-grieve the thing before it arrives. The dread is not the brain telling you the thing will go wrong. It is the brain paying a survival premium on something that matters. An act of protection, wearing the clothes of anxiety. A researcher named Timothy Borkovec, who spent 40 years studying worry, noticed that it is not concentrated on the scenarios that feel most likely. It is concentrated on the outcomes the worrier has decided they cannot recover from. The flight delay is not the actual fear. The actual fear is, everything I was counting on collapses and I am back where I started. The brain does not pre-grieve the things it could handle losing. It pre-grieves the things it has decided it could not, which means the size of your dread is a direct measure of how much you want it. The worse you feel in the 3 days before, the more the thing has already become something real to you. So what do you do with it? Not fight it. Fighting the simulation only tells the threat system there is a threat. It reads your resistance as confirmation and turns up louder. Not reason with it either, because the rational answer, the flight will be fine, does not reach the system that is running the worry. That system does not speak in probabilities. It speaks in importance. What works is something simpler. Notice that the dread is not about the thing going wrong. It is about how much the thing means to you. Recognize that the channel running catastrophes in the background is not your enemy and is not your forecast. It is a guard, overqualified, ancient, paying forward a cost you may never actually owe. You do not have to shut it up. You just do not have to mistake it for a profit. The thing is still coming. You are allowed to let it approach while the second channel runs. And you are allowed, quietly, without having to earn it, to let the good thing simply be on its way, undefended. You have already paid. Let it come anyway. If sitting with the careful version of a feeling is the kind of thing that stays with you, subscribe to Pondara. This is exactly where we live. And tell me in the comments, what is the last thing you were genuinely looking forward to, and how bad did the dread get before it arrived? I think you are going to find you are in very good company.